that far away. Okay. And away we go. Welcome back to Sports Econ 101. I'm Edward Brown, your host, and on the phone we have Vern Glenn.
What's up, America?
Yeah.
Scottsdale, Arizona.
And what's the weather like down there?
75 degrees, sunny, just beautiful spring training baseball weather. That's why I'm here.
That's why you're there. Okay, and Bruce is off today, but we have two guests with us. They are sports psychologists. Jeff Greenwald, who, get this, Vern, he was #1 in the world in the tennis senior circuit at age, 35 to 45? And we also have Keith Power, and you ready for this? He's 6 foot, 300 pounds, used to be a figure skater, and then he moved to being a hammer thrower, right?
You can agree very quickly. It's a long story.
It's a long
Wow, what a combo.
Yeah.
You're in trouble. Yeah.
All right, so guys, I'm going to just start off with the first one here, which is performance psychology. All right, in sports and business has really blossomed over the past 5 to 10 years. Why do you think we're seeing such momentum in these areas at this time?
Well, I think there are a lot of differences between sport and business, but there's really a lot of commonalities, and I think one part of that, an important part, is the mind. And certainly we do a lot of work with top executives and look at it different ways, how mentally they can perform at a more consistent and a higher level, and how they can perform under pressure. And I think there's a lot of stuff from a sport basis in terms of individuals, in terms of teams, that business can learn from.
Okay, well, now give us a little bit of background, because I just mentioned to Vern that you used to be a figure skater, and then things changed a little bit. Why don't you go through that maturation?
I'll be very brief. So when I was very young, when I was around 10, 11, I was an international ice skater for Great Britain. And obviously you go from ice skating to hammer throwing. So
yeah, of course. Well, hence the accent.
Hence the accent, yeah. So I fell in love with track and field. Was an international hammer thrower. Realised I wasn't going to cut it at the very highest level, although I was pretty good. I was an international. And I went into bobsledding, or bobsleigh, as we like to say in Britain.
So, and when you did figure skating, was it just singles, or did you
just singles? It wasn't even Blades of Glory stuff.
Yeah,
so,
okay.
So
well, because I was just going to say that. Can you?
Yeah, that was going to be my next question. We're talking about triple sow cow, the toe loop, all that stuff.
I could do that, triple lutz and all those kind of things. It was.
I was thinking about the hammer throwing. I was thinking, can you imagine if you would have taken one of those women and said, "Hey, baby, hammer throwing. We're going to practice with you first."
I think I was too young for that. If it'd been a bit older,
that's right. You were young.
Too young. So I was very fortunate competing those 3 sports internationally, and then I took over at a very young age. When I was 23, as the head coach for Great Britain at the Olympics for bobsleigh. And I'm very proud of the fact I'm in the Guinness Book of Records as the youngest person ever to coach at the Olympic Games.
Well, wait, Vern, we were talking before we went on the air about the movie Cool Runnings.
Yeah.
So he was the John Candy part. And is that why you gained all that weight?
Well,
just to be
just like John Candy. I'm not quite in John Candy's shoes at the moment. But,
thank goodness.
Which is good.
I carry it well.
Making bobsled team, they didn't make it this time.
Yeah, they finished in last place, so they were.
Yeah, last place. Yeah, so no medal again.
No medal again, but I'm not sure they quite had the talent and resources as a lot of other countries had.
Well, when you're training in sand,
It's pretty tough.
Okay, and so Jeff, give us a little background about yourself, because I was introduced you as you were #1 in the world for tennis in the senior circuit. Before you got into the senior circuit, what were your ranks?
Well, we should probably go back to when I started, which was at 12 years old, and at that point I was throwing my racket around a bit, and so, but I did say I wanted to be a pro tennis player at 12 years old.
There you go.
My parents put me on a plane and sent me down to Voluntary Academy for 2-3 years. So.
Wow, okay, that's serious.
Kind of what some of these kids do.
Not like me playing the clarinet, and then after a year saying, I hate this thing, get me out of here. You stuck with it.
I stuck with it, yeah, but not without its challenges along the way, and played in college. So I played a little pro for a couple of years, but definitely in the last, 15 years found the mental aspect and how to get into that zone and what to do to prepare to play my best more consistently. So anyway, I figured something out, so that was helpful.
Okay. Vern, do you want to ask any questions before I get into these other ones?
I'm curious. As a sports psychologist and as a father of three athletes myself, what particularly, how do you get inside these heads of these athletes to I guess, tap into their potential to make them just leave everything out on the pool, the track, the field, or whatever, instead of just doing enough to get by.
Well, there's sort of two parts to that. One, those who do just enough to get by, and then those who are just hampered, right, by pressure, by anxiety, by what we know as performance anxiety, right? So there's a lot of hornets flying around ready to sting you when you're an athlete trying to win and make money and feed your kids, as you said, Vern. So
well, that's what we talked about this a couple of weeks ago. Jan Stenerud just kept thinking to himself, "I'm going to miss this field goal, against the Miami Dolphins."
That's not a good thought.
No, that's not, and that's why they didn't get into the Super Bowl that year. I think that was the '72 year.
But those thoughts come, right? And everyone, you have to learn how to deal with those, right? So
doubts,
it keeps us in business, I guess. But it is, yeah.
Okay.
There's science behind it.
Well, another thing I'd chip in, Vern, I think part of it is, obviously you're a parent yourself, you want your kids to do as well as they want to do in sport, and certainly there's a lot of research on the parenting side that creating the right environment for kids is critical, and often at an early age we lose a lot of kids get burnt out because the parents don't create the right environment, put far too much pressure on them, and they're not mini adults, they're children, and dealing with them is different than dealing with pro athletes.
In this competitive world that we live in, especially with kids at a younger age, because now, instead of having kids that play everything, there's kids now that are like specialty, whether they just limit themselves like one sport or whatever like that. But in this competitive world, where there's so much pressure on these kids to perform, do you find like you're getting more business than ever?
Yeah, I'm the CEO of our company, which is Keith Power Associates, and we do a lot of work, across all sorts of different areas, and one of them is we run a program called Elite Parenting, which is helping parents understand how to get the best out of their kids academically and how to get the best out of them from a sporting context. And it's not really saying that the world isn't a tough place, it's just the kind of like verbally beating up your kids and shouting at them every weekend when they're playing sports and whinging and moaning at them is not going to get the best out of them. So there are different routes to get the best out of them.
Yeah, here in Marin County, sometimes they have certain weeks, they call them silent weeks, and it's like you're not allowed to cheer, jeer, or anything as a fan, which is making it very quiet and not very good, I got to tell you.
Well, I don't know where you've been hanging out. My kids play soccer. My son's 5.5, daughter's 7, and a lot of parents are out there, and it's the expectations. Vern, to your point, you guys, the expectations are high, and kids are coming into my office and frequently just having a specific college in mind, wanting to be pro, and a lot of pressure for sure.
Wow. And just an interesting piece of research was there's something called the Special Study, which actually started in the 1950s, and it was a University of Chicago psychology school, and they asked children and teenagers, how special are you compared to the people that you compete against in sport? And in 1952, when they first did the study, only 4% of the children said they were special and they were kind of elite. And the last piece of research that was done, which was 3 years ago, 82% of the children said they were special.
Interesting. Hey guys, we're going to cut to our first commercial break here, and again, the theme is the Olympics. All right? Figured, right around Winter Olympics time, right? Okay, here's the first commercial break. Here's the first trivia question. This is the first time we've ever had a multiple choice question, all right?
I love that.
Okay, in the original Olympics, there were only about 5 events, okay? That's a fact. How many events are there in the modern day summer and winter Olympic Games? And you have a choice, 100, 200, 300, 400, or 500 events. That's a lot of events. The first 3 emails, we're going to do the emails this time. The first 3 emails with the correct answer win a free 3-day, 2-night stay at the Lighthouse Resort. Email Edward at sportsecon101.com the answer to this question. In the original Olympics, there were only 5 events. How many events are there now in the modern day Summer and Winter Olympics? 100, 200, 300, 400, or 500? Don't touch that dial. Sports Econ 101 will be right back. Okay, so there's our first segment.
All right.
Okay, you can hear okay?
I am in my room.
Oh, good.
6:15.
Excellent.
In the time of that segment, I drove the car, parked it in the garage, got in the elevator, and parked it in my room. All that in one segment.
Not bad.
I'm scared to hear what's going to happen in the next segment.
Yeah. Oh, who is that in the picture?
Oh, that's the camera guy I'm working with.
Oh, okay. Because I'm thinking.
We'll sing it.
Okay, I'm thinking. Gosh, is there someone famous that I just don't? Someone I don't know.
No, we were just thinking we'll selfie together.
Okay, yeah.
That was at Phoenix County. This is the last year that the A's are in Phoenix. Next year they move to Mesa.
Oh, that's right. Are you
to the old Cubs facility.
And are you going back down to spring training again?
No, this will be it. It's a long trip. So this is for this trip. I'm here through Saturday. So between now and Saturday, we're either going to the A's or Giants every day, shooting a lot of content, and just doing a bevy of interviews, probably with most of the position players, the interesting stories. We're trying to generate enough content to last us in particular shows until camp brings at the end of March, because
Interesting.
this is the one trip we're not coming back.
Okay, because I'm going down beginning of March, and Max Venable's going to be there, so I'm going to meet up with him, we'll go watch Will play, and I think John Miller is going to be down there by then, and I don't know if he'll probably do the same thing.
They'll be doing games on KNBR by then.
Okay,
Yeah.
so he said, yeah, it's great that he's going to be on. We'll have to think about, what kind of fun stuff we can do with him.
I'll tell you a quick story. Years ago, we had John Miller on Sports Final with Ron, and he's the only guy in the history of Sports Final that sent us a bill.
Well, he didn't say anything about.
Did you pay it?
Did you pay it?
No.
He seems like a nice guy. Okay. Let's see here. Okay, you guys ready? We'll go to the next segment here.
Let's do it.
Okay. Yeah, I know there's one of them broke, but we got that one. That's some lady broke. Welcome back to Sports Econ 101. I'm Edward Brown, your host, with Vern Glenn on the phone. Down at spring training there. Bruce McGowan's off today, and we've got a couple of extra special guests here, which we'll reintroduce them right after the answer to the trivia question. Here was the first trivia question. Again, the theme was the Olympics. Now, in the original Olympics, there were only about five events. How many events are there in the modern-day Summer and Winter Olympic Games? And this was multiple choice: 100, 200, 300, 400, or 500. What's the answer?
I'm gonna go 200 B.
Okay, and gentlemen?
I would normally go 200.
Gentlemen?
But today, 300.
Actually, it's 400.
Oh.
400 events. Isn't that amazing?
Wow. Well, and it cut out some events now.
Yeah, that's true.
Like baseball.
Wrestling and
Yeah, like the important ones.
baseball is out. Yeah.
Okay, we are in the studio with Jeff Greenwald and Keith Power, who are sports psychologists. And I don't even have a couch in my office here, studio. Okay, now let's get into a couple other questions here. So the momentum has not been without its challenges. What sorts of walls have had to come down for more people and organizations to embrace these ideas that our mental game mindset can make such a difference?
I think obviously the world of psychotherapy, psychology, the Freudian kind of, like you just said, I don't even have a couch here. Don't worry, we're getting some in. Don't worry.
Okay, good
for you. But there certainly was a stigma that lasted a while. I think in the last decade, we've seen, particularly 5 or 10 years, teams recognize that to get an edge, they need the science behind performance. They need to understand that, in fact, there are things they don't know they can do that will seriously enhance their performance.
Well, before we went on air, we were talking about Buddy Biancalana, who's a guest on the show, who is, I don't think Vern, he's not considered a sports psychologist, but he did write a book about being in the zone. Remember that?
Yeah, he did. Yeah, and it was kind of insights from an athlete's perspective, which he kind of took you there, kind of put the bat in your hands, and kind of gave you a sense of what he was thinking.
Mm-hmm.
But I think with sports psychology, I mean, you guys know better than I do, obviously. I mean, it's your profession, but boy, I think there's a lot of athletes out there, particularly elite athletes. They all have God given a talent. So I mean, I'm hearing stuff like maybe a lot of the success is maybe, I don't know, 60-70%, like in between their ears in the old game upstairs.
Well, that's what. Do you remember Paul Kingsman, a friend of mine who was a bronze medal winner in the backstroke? He said that when you get to that Olympic level, he says almost everybody is about at the same, and it's all in the mind. It's all in the head games.
Yeah. There was a great piece of research done a couple of years ago in the Olympics, and also it was who got drafted to the NFL, the NBA, professional teams, and who were the people who made it to the Olympics and succeeded in the Olympics. And they looked at things like the skill level, and they measured fitness, and they looked at all sorts of different variables. And the only one that was significantly different was the psychological variables. So what we tend to find is that the people who are successful in sport have higher and more consistent levels of motivation, higher and more consistent levels of confidence. And when you talk about flow states and being in the zone, where sports psychology is going at the moment is that stuff's really important, but not as important is the how do you feel, and if you get up in the morning you don't feel great and you've got to compete.
Well,
so
that's a good point.
Is around that.
Well, like
performance.
Well, like baseball. I mean, if that's 162 games,
right.
Sometimes these guys don't get a day off for quite a while, and they have to do all that traveling with the airplane and everything.
Sure.
Time zones.
And our thing is around sustained high performance. We can throw around the concept of peak performance, but how do we keep it, maintain it, like you said, over 162 games? And that involves sleep, nutrition, etc. So it's a lot of the aspects.
Well, I mean, I was a semi-professional bowler, but I knew deep in my heart I wasn't good enough to be like the guys on TV. I just didn't have the stamina.
You wanted a radio show. That's
what I wanted. Yeah, I wanted a radio show.
Deep down, I saw that.
Yeah, but Edward, my question to you is, how did you know? I mean, did you convince yourself?
No, you know what?
Your brain just said, okay, I just have to shut it down. Or I mean, what part of the brain kind of maybe steps forward and says, no, you can't do it.
Well,
you got to throw 100 balls a day. You got to do this, that, whatever.
Well, I think part of it had to do with the physicality of it. My thumb. I'd broken my thumb when I was 17. That really, effectively, it really hurt my career because I was starting to turn pro actually at 17. But so you go day after day, you practice, and then there were definitely times when I had my one zone where I won a tournament and I did really well, and it's like I knew I was going to win it. It was that sort of thing. But the rest of it, though, you get these little aches and pains and certain things. You go, I just can't. I just knew that deep down, no matter how much I tried, I couldn't get over that hump.
I think your point, around how fragile the zone is, and how peak performance requires so many aspects, things to keep in mind to get, to be positioned so you can have that great day or those great performances.
Well, it's interesting. The one time when I won that tournament, I actually started off even though I knew before the tournament even started, I just knew I was going to win it. I started off terrible. And I had to really just crank it in order to get to the next level. Then I started terrible again in the semifinals, and I had to crank it to get to the finals. It was really odd.
Nice not to have expectations, Ed, right?
But but my expectation was, wait a minute, I thought I was going to win this thing. Let me ask you guys, what do you guys charge? How much does this cost?
Well, it really depends upon what we're doing. So if it's like individual, consultations, there'll be a different fee. If we're working with professional athletes, college athletes, it really depends. And then the other side of it is we run a lot of workshops for businesses and also for team development, those kind of things. So they all come in at different price points. But we're pretty good, but so we can't really tell. It's state secrets.
But in the USA Today, I think it was about 5 years ago, that they had sports psychologists ranging from essentially 125 to for just individual consultation, up to $300. You know,
per hour.
per hour, 125 to 300. That was sort of the kind of the range for sports psychology. Yeah.
Well, this brings about a big question. Okay, here's a guy that could be considered a hot button issue. When you talk about guys who maybe had that mental edge, lost it, and now they're trying to get it back. And I'm talking about Tiger Woods.
Oh,
There was a time he would show up and just immediately get in your head. He just had to look at you, and he was in your head, and guys would just crumble. And now, for whatever reason, he can't putt, can't hit the green consistently. Can't. I mean, he's pulled out a turn. Yeah, he's going to play this coming weekend, but I mean, he just essentially compared to what he used to be, lost it.
Well, let me jump in for a minute. You know what?
How does he?
Hey, Vern, I'm going to guess part of it is that these other people don't have ex-wives running after you with golf clubs trying to kill you.
It's called post-traumatic stress disorder.
Yeah.
When you've got your wife chasing you down the street with a golf club. No, but I would just say, Vern, it's a great question. And, one thing I would say, and if you look at a lot of top athletes, and of course I've worked with a lot of tennis players, Federer, who sort of was on top and did so fantastically well. And, when the guys get a piece here, when people get a piece here and they see you're vulnerable, it's like sharks to blood, And Tiger had this aura, had this thing. It was his own and others. And that perception is huge. So I think there's an element of invincibility that can be chipped away at, no pun intended. So I think that's part of it.
Well, and also I was just going to say is that sometimes we always go to the mental side, and obviously that's a big part of what we do, but that's not always the case. So any performance is really made up of three areas, which is skills, the fitness requirements of the sport, and the mental skills required of the sport. And I don't know Tiger's situation, but I think we have to look at how much stress has been on his body, his injuries, and probably physically. He's not
also
been at his best.
his personal life just went to hell in a
Yeah, and
handbasket
there's his personal life, so
which is going to affect your game.
Absolutely.
Sure, and it could just well be that his body's just not in good shape, and he can't, he's not able to just perform to the levels that he used to be.
Well, now, okay, you mentioned Federer, so he was a client of yours.
No, he was not.
Oh, okay. How do people find you? I mean, do they just get referred by other people who've had success with you? I mean,
that's now how it is often now is clients referring clients. If you've done a good job, because the rubber meets the road. If people are getting better, playing better, hey, what's going on with so and so? They're really doing well, and then so people talk, and that's a referral. Word of mouth is a big part of it. Sure.
I wonder how much of it is just the idea that someone says, I am now going to a sports psychologist. Internally, they just, it's like going to a doctor when you're not feeling well and just go, I know I'm going to get better because I'm going to go see the doctor.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's sort of, because it's all internal within themselves. It's not like you're giving them any pills. You're not giving them drugs.
Right.
It's all a mental thing anyway, right?
Well, it's as Keith said, it's a combination and looking at their overall profile. But, so...
Well, and my favourite joke in the world is how many sports psychologists does it take to change a light bulb? And do you know what the answer is to that? The answer is that it doesn't matter how many sports psychologists you've got, the light bulb has got to want to change.
Yeah.
And, so it is.
I like that. Did you hear that one?
Yeah.
That was a good one. Okay, hey, tell you what, stay with us. We got to cut to another commercial break here. Again, the theme is the Olympics. I like that. The light bulb has to change. Okay, here's our second trivia question. The Olympic Games were started by the ancient Greeks to honor what mythological god? The first three emails with the correct answer win a free 3-day, 2-night stay at the Lighthouse Resort. Email edward@sportsecon101.com the answer to this question. In the original Olympic Games, the original Olympic Games were started by the ancient Greeks to honor what mythological god? Don't touch that dial. Sports Econ 101. We'll be right back. Okay.
You're looking that up, do you, to try and...
Yeah, I know. Sometimes guys do that. Okay. All right, who knows the answer to that one? You know what I was going to say, that sometimes your watch was
I just heard it. I just heard it and I went, oh, yeah. I just heard it at the exact time you said, get rid of it.
Well, okay, you see that towel over there?
Mm-hmm.
I used to tease Vern because he was really, he's animated, so he'd pound on the desk so I got him a towel. Hey, you haven't used that towel for a while.
The Vern Glenn Memorial Towel.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, man.
Okay. One more, and then we'll let you go there, my friend.
All right.
Good. And then hopefully next week, I'll get in touch with Steve Baker because I didn't want him to wait because he said his dad died.
Yeah. No telling on. I mean, I don't know if he sent me a text sometime late last week, but we're all still trying to process what happened. And,
Yeah.
So he was still back there. So I don't know what.
Okay.
I don't know what plans, arrangements are being made.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I figured I'd give him some time and then just sort of like.
I'll probably at this point. I'll probably maybe later today, where I'll reach out to his wife.
Okay.
Next morning and find out what's going on.
Yeah. Thing is, I didn't know him, so I thought it wouldn't be appropriate for me to. Gee, I'm sorry your dad died. Now make sure that you're with us next week.
Right.
You know.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, really.
Yeah, it doesn't
exactly.
sound so good.
Yeah.
I'll need a sports psychologist myself on that one. The light
Yeah.
bulb needs to change. He needs to want to change.
Wants to change,
Wants
yes.
to change. Yes. That's great.
That's critical.
See, when I've been to therapy before, it's really simple. The therapist, my wife, just agree on what I need to do change, and that's the end
Exactly.
of it.
Yes, dear. Yes, dear.
You and Nikki ever gone to therapy?
No, we haven't.
Oh.
I could say maybe I've been driven to therapy.
Either you're driven to drinking or therapy.
Yeah.
I wonder, you know what? The sports psychologist is like a regular one. You just have a nice big bottle of whiskey.
That was the old days.
That was the old
That
days.
was a sports psychologist in the old days. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So what I'm going to do, boy, we're going on a lot of segments here. We can cover a bunch of this other stuff that I wanted to cover, which is okay. So, tell you what, we'll move quickly through some of these things, and then we'll go on to, because I always like to do some little bit of variety
Sure.
stuff. Okay, here we go. Welcome back to Sports Econ 101. I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with Vern Glenn on the phone.
Yes, sir.
Yes, and we got a couple of sports psychologists with us here who we'll reintroduce in just a moment. When we cut to the second commercial break, we ask this trivia question again. The theme is the Olympics. The Olympic Games were started by the ancient Greeks to honor what mythological god? Anybody?
Zeus.
That's
Zeus. That is correct. That is. You're the man. I would have thought, okay, maybe Hercules or something. No, Zeus. Very good.
Well, this was the big heavy.
Yeah, he was the big heavy.
He was.
Yeah, you're right. You're right on that. Okay. Okay. So now, guys, I want to ask you one of those questions here. There are so many things that go into marketing great teams. The difference between great and just average performance among athletes, teams, or organizations can often seem small, not to mention so intangible. How do you determine which factors matter most to improve someone's performance, or how to take employees in the organization to the next level?
Well, I mean, I would say going back to sport and business, one of the things that sport is really good at is understanding human performance and understanding how the body works at the highest level, how emotions work, how the mind works at the highest level, the importance of nutrition, sleep, those particular areas. And having worked, with a lot of top global organizations, and obviously a lot of top sports teams, individuals, is that I think it's one of the areas that business doesn't do a good job of. Is that usually it's all about, well, if we just push people as hard as we can for as long as we can, we'll squeeze every drop out of their performance. But there are physical and mental limitations. And so looking at different ways, and that's certainly one of the programs that we work with, is something called Elite Performer, looking at different ways that individuals in high pressure environments can perform at a more consistent level and a high level.
Okay, so now both of you, Jeff Greenwald and Keith Power, you both played at a high level in your respective sports. How do your own experiences as athletes inform what you do now?
I think, certainly it helps when we're talking to athletes or organizations, people who are under pressure, who have presentations maybe that they're facing an anxiety around that or wanting to be the best and sort of sustain high performance. And we've had to, dial in our own performances and really figure out what do we need to do before the World Championships? What is it that, a month or two before, what do I need to be doing each day to get myself in that position, as Buddy said, to get into the zone? So I'm eating better, I'm getting to the gym, or I'm doing the cardio, I'm on my sleep. So my wife, of course, is always saying, like, oh really, the world you're gonna play again? Like she knows, like where this is going. It's
Well, you know what this reminds me of? You remember the original Rocky movie where not Clubber Lang, but Apollo Creed, he's getting ready, and his trainer, you're the best in the world. No one can beat you. You know, I mean that's kind of a little bit of sports psychology. You remember that, Vern?
Oh yeah,
Yeah. Dude.
And now it's a bunch of these, especially in the NBA. You know, they're yo boys. You know, they're goodies. The ones that are hanging out with them, like saying, man,
entourage.
Man, you ain't those guys are soft. Hey, you beat those guys. You know.
Yeah, my wife, I put her in that role. You're the best. You're the best.
You're the best. Yeah.
Jeff,
You're the king. You're the king.
You're the king. You come in this one. This is yours. This is yours.
In or out of bed, right?
Hey, keep it clean.
Keep it clean. Yeah, this is a family show. All right, guys, you know what? Stay with us because I'm going to move on to a couple of things. Thank you very much. By the way, how do people get a hold of you if they need some sports psychology?
Well, if they want to go onto our website, that's probably the easiest thing, and it's www.kpaelite.com. So that's kpaelite.com, and that will have all their contact details there if you want to get hold of myself and Jeff. And I know Jeff has his own website as well,
which is jeffhgreenwald.com.
It's very simple.
All right. I have one last question for both of you guys. Is there one particular sport that has the greatest amount of sports psychologists than maybe the others?
That's a good one.
Yeah, that's a great question, and it tends to be
Curling.
the individual sports. So if you take golf and if you take tennis, you probably have the top 100 players in the world. Probably less than 5 are not working with or have worked with a sports psychologist or some kind of mental skills coach. So certainly it's massive in those sports, and you have a small army of sports psychologists that follow these people around the world on the circuits.
Yeah, that makes sense. I understand that. Okay, we're going to move on for just a minute here. Derek Jeter announces his retirement, and the ticket prices for the September Yankee Stadium games have soared, as well as the last 3 series on the road to Boston.
I believe on that note, tickets for Jeter's last game of the Yankees more than tickets to opening day and the ring ceremony of the Boston Red Sox.
Wow. That's amazing. Well, you know, it reminds me that when Cal Ripken announced, his retirement, and he went around doing the circuit, it's going to be kind of the same thing, don't you think?
Yeah, it's Zeus falling from grace.
Yeah.
Zeus is taken out.
The difference between Jeter and Cal Ripken is that there's a lot of women and a lot of ports who are jockeying to get their last dibs at him.
Oh, really?
They could be all women. All those tickets.
Yeah.
Well, the last game versus the Orioles at 2 p.m., just before the announcement, the prices were $26. By 5 p.m., it was $280 for a cheap seat, and by nighttime, the price was $800. And last year, the market was more bullish for Rivera's retirement. Remember, Mariano Rivera did it. And it said here, okay, on March 9th, of last year, the peak day when Mariano Rivera announced his retirement, the average ticket price for the final home game rose to $467 and wound up falling by nearly 50% by the day of the game. Isn't that amazing? So it's all, so this guy here says he recommends that the fans sit tight and allow the hysteria to die down, citing the same kind of drop, that happened to Rivera will probably happen here. It says here, of course, by September, there's a good chance that fans will know whether the Yankees will be bound for the playoffs, which would alter the frenzy over watching Jeter's last game, right? That makes sense. Okay. Now, did you guys hear about this running back named Jennifer Welter? And she made history by playing in a pro football game. Of course, I think it was arena football, but still. So this young lady is 5'2", 130 pounds, and she was a running back. And I don't know if you watched any of the videos, but oh man, she got creamed. She was met by 6'4", 245-pound defensive lineman Cedric Hervey for a 1-yard loss, and said that apparently she was unfazed. And then she ends up telling him, "Is that all you got?" She goes, "I didn't want him to think that I was intimidated."
She doesn't probably need our services.
Yeah.
For a 1-yard loss, and then she got his face.
Oh yeah. Well, it's not so much got in his face, but she just kind of announced, I mean, it's interesting because you watch her get whacked, and you can hear the audience groan, and then she just gets right up.
Wow.
So
That's the first time I've ever heard of a woman in a football uniform in a game trying to emasculate a 6'4", 280-pound man.
yeah, well,
Either fearless or stupidity. I don't know.
Well, they said
time
that
will
this is
tell.
the first time it was a non-kicker. Because remember, there was a woman who kicked field goals, I think, for a while. So now, what do you guys think about the Texas Rangers acquiring Prince Fielder? I mean, I don't know. You know, Fielder had a terrible year.
Well, I just see him as a one-trick pony.
Yeah.
And so he just doesn't have that range of different abilities that I think baseball requires today. And that's spoken as a British guy, not as an American.
Well, the Rangers have lost a lot. I think the loss of Ian Kinsler means a lot. I think their pitching has been affected. I mean, they really, I mean, they really went out of their way to bring in Fielder. But the spinning in the American League West is just ridiculous. I mean, the Rangers and the Angels, and meantime you got puny little Oakland Athletics who just with a limited payroll, they go out and they win the American League West the last 2 years, and now they Billy Bean, they've been able to assemble a starting pitching staff and a relieving staff that's considered the best in baseball.
That's amazing.
Moneyball.
Moneyball. That's it. Well, you know, last year Fielder had career lows in homers and slugging percentages. You know, I don't know. I look at him as he kind of reminds me of Ryan Howard. You know, he's just a little bit too big and I don't know. What's a nice way of saying slow?
Well, maybe he needs a sports psychologist, guys.
That's you know what?
Well, I mean, it's just as a kind of, you know, I obviously I'm a permanent resident here now, but as someone who didn't grow up with baseball, one of the things I find very strange, and perhaps people have got an answer for this, is that how so many of a number of the top players are so much overweight and not in great shape. And I find it interesting in the modern game how that's allowed to happen. Is those of you who know the game of cricket, is that it was kind of how that was like 10, 15 years ago. But even now in a sport like cricket, everyone is in incredibly good shape and fitness is so important. So I'm just surprised that there's not more stuff going on with contracts and people being insistent that people are in reasonable shape.
Well, hey, Vern, before we started the show, I was asking Keith about cricket, and he said, well, because I didn't understand the game that much, and he said, well, if you got about 3 days, I'll explain it to you. And I go, yeah, that's about how long cricket games are.
That's how long your game is.
That's right.
It can go on and on and on.
Now, I heard, and I don't know if you know this, but I heard that, okay, you know Foster's, the beer?
Uh-huh.
You know how huge those cans are,
Mhm.
right? I heard the reason... Boston's Lager, exactly. The reason that they're so big is that apparently the rules were you could only bring a six-pack in to a game. So they made these cans as big as possible. I don't know if that's true, but that kind of makes sense.
Good theory. Makes for a great story.
Yep.
And I'll give you a quick story there as well. There's a famous cricketer, Australian cricketer called Rodney Marsh. And on the trip, which is 24 hours between Australia and England on one of the tours, he actually drank 64 cans on that tour. So just on that actual flight, 24 hours, and they have this competition, the Australians, every time that they go on tour to the UK, see if anyone can break the record. It's about 25 years old now.
And but they have to have a bathroom close by that is constantly
Or a
open.
big trash bag. So
Yeah. So last thing here before we cut to our break, Oklahoma State's sophomore guard Marcus Smart, considered one of the best all-around players in the country, but is losing his composure. Figured we have sports psychologists on. We'll talk about that. Apparently, he pushed a fan, so he gets suspended for 3 games. And wondered, you know, if that's fair and how that can hurt his chances for the future. If you're an NBA coach, do you draft him? Vern, what do you think about that?
Well, I mean, I know a little bit more about this story. I mean, it was a game. He was flying out of bounds, making a defensive play, and he kind of fell into like the first row. And this was at Texas Tech, and a longtime Texas Tech fan allegedly may or may not have used the N-word, but he did say something insulting. And Marcus got right up and went up to the guy, yelled at him, and then shoved him. And then walked back. He was escorted out, and the Big Ten commissioner went in and suspended him for the game. Now, at the time, Smart was considered certainly a top 1 1-5 pick in the NBA draft. But now that he's had this lots of exposure, yeah, there are now questions of does his not drop or whatever. But he's now it's come out that apparently he has now tweeted a blogger during a game. Now this just hearsay. That was I just found that out earlier.
Hey, Vern, stay with us. We got to cut to our quick commercial break because I want to hear the rest of this. Okay, third trivia question, commercial break here. In 2008, we're talking about the Olympics. Michael Phelps beat Milorad Kavik by 1/100th of a second in a swim.
I remember that race. He out-touched him.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's right. Now, I was going to say, your kids are swimmers, so you'll know this, the answer to this one. So he did it. He beat him by 1/100th of a second in a swimming race. What stroke was he swimming in that race? The first three emails with the correct answer were a free 3-day, 2-night stay at the Lighthouse Resort. Email Edward at SportsEcon101. The answer to this question: Michael Phelps in 2008 beat Milorad Kavik by 1/100th of a second in a swimming race. What stroke was he swimming? Don't touch that dial. Sports Econ 101 will be right back.
200 butterfly.
That's right.
Yeah, yeah.
There's the butterfly. See, his kids are big swimmers.
God, I mean, he was just so close to it.
That's crazy.
Yeah, touched the wall.
Yeah.
Where it was just bam. That was it. Yep.
Okay.
When we're done, what time do you say that?
We should be. We have 2 minutes to go. That's it.
Love that funky head on the field.
Okay. Actually, it's.
Well, Vern, in the last few years back when I was competing in bobsleigh, is that in the World Cup circuit, you do 4 runs, and each run is roughly a mile. So you do 4 miles on ice. And in the last event that I ever competed in, the top 6 teams were separated by 900ths of a second.
Jeez,
That's amazing.
Wow, my God.
It was very close in the 2-man event that I watched.
That's crazy.
What is
it's
it?
super.
Can you bring that up again on the air?
Sure.
Okay. So we'll answer the question, and then Vern, do you want to stay with us or?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, because we only have 2 minutes to go. All right. So we're gonna let Keith answer that question. Okay. And away we go. Someone's breathing into the thing. Are you breathing? Are you breathing? Stop breathing. No, I'm just kidding. No breathing. Okay. All right. Here we go. Welcome back to Sports Econ 101. I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with Vern Glenn, our co-host here in spring training.
Just chilling.
Just chilling, baby. Okay, and we cut to the third and final commercial break. We asked this trivia question. Again, the theme is the Olympics in 2008. Michael Phelps beat Milorad Kavik by 1/100th of a second in a swimming race. What stroke was that? Keith knows the answer as well as Vern.
It was 200 fly, 200
The
butterfly.
butterfly. That is correct.
Right.
Now, you were telling us off air an interesting story about bobsled and time.
Yeah.
You got 1 minute. Go ahead.
Sure, very quickly. So at the World Cup and Olympic Games, you do 4 runs. Each run is roughly a mile long. People often say, well, 100 meters, people winning by 100 or 200. That's really super close. A few years ago, the last event I ever competed in on the World Cup circuit, we finished 4th out of about 40 teams. And the first 6 teams were separated by 900ths of a second. So again, for me, 900ths of a second over 4 miles on ice is nothing. And I think it really illustrates a sport at the highest level is that you've got to get everything right physically, mentally, technically, tactically. Really, really important. It's never one thing. It's understanding, getting everything right.
Is it still winning by a nose then? Nose of the
Maybe a hair.
Something like that. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, in fact, our friend Paul Kingsman, he won the bronze medal by 3/1000ths of a second, I think it was. Otherwise, he would have been 4th, which is not worth anything, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Okay, here's our thoughts today. First of all, I want to thank our guests, Jeff Greenwald and Keith Power, who are sports psychologists. Thank you, Vern, for joining us on the phone.
Great to
All right,
be here.
pleasure.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Okay. So here's our thoughts for the day. Pain is only temporary, but victory is forever. Teach that to your guys, huh? And don't practice until you get it right. Practice until you can't get it wrong. Words of
You
wisdom
have a
here.
budding career then.
Yeah, there you go. Tune in next week to Sports Econ 101. We're going to be discussing sports topics from a business perspective and giving away more free vacations for answering trivia questions. Thanks for listening. On behalf of our team, I'm your host, Edward Brown. We'll see you next week.
Goodbye, Eric.
Goodbye, America. There you go. So long. Yeah, that's Vern's special goodbye.
But
All right,
said-
my friend.